All right, we're going live in three, two, three, two. Got it. All right, so 56 that'll put me at 701. All right, cool. All right, we're going live in three, two, one. Good afternoon and welcome to the latest. Back up. This week on the latest episode of The Big Show, it has been a week of massive loss. We lost James Earl Jones this week. We lost Frankie Beverly this week. And finally, we lost Tina McElroy Ansa. Plus, we want to talk and recap a little bit of the Toronto Film Festival. We'll have all that and more on the latest episode, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go.
Experience life through the eyes of a true film addict. Keeping it real with Film Gordon.
Keeping it real. Keeping it real with Film Gordon. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real with Film Gordon. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real. Keeping it real with
All right, and welcome to the latest episode, Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon and Charles Kirkland. I am joined by my good friend, Charles Kirkland. Charles, what's going on?
Shame, 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 shame.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So, welcome to our show. And like I said, this is going to be a very interesting hour that we're going to share. First of all, you'll notice that we are not in the studio this week. And for reasons I'm not even going into, let's just say in 4 decades, Charles, of living in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia, I've never seen what you and I experienced earlier today trying to get into the studio with a huge police presence, a major funeral going on in city that wouldn't allow us to be in studio. So I had to call in and go, hey, we can't do the show from the studio today. We got to go back home and make it happen. Charles, you got home after me, man. How did that experience work for you today?
Well, I did make my way downtown, like you said. I had for reasons that are known to you, but I had to get downtown, so I fought through all the traffic and the madness because DC is my city, so I didn't have a problem finding my way downtown through whatever routes that I had to make. And then, it wasn't as complicated getting out as it was getting in. So, it harkened me back to 9/11 when we had the chaos that was going on in the city when the towers fell. It reminded me a lot of that. I still think that today's presence was a lot stronger than what I went through even on 9/11. So it was a madhouse. If you were trying to get into the city, into Washington D.C. today, and it was crazy because as I was driving even through Prince George's County getting to D.C., I'm looking on overpasses and exit ramps, and there's police sitting at every intersection.
Everywhere.
It was just amazing.
Oh, so that happened today. So, but this is what I call a bittersweet week, man. I mean, we were in Toronto. You got back after I did, but we were both there at minimum at least 5-6 days. We sat down and had a conversation that between you and I, despite the fact that I think they had 436 films at TIFF, you and I collectively saw 51. So we saw an 8 of the films that were at TIFF. And saw some good films, man. There were some films that I missed. We've got another festival coming up next month, the Middleburg Film Fest, that hopefully some of the titles that I didn't get a chance to see, and I know you feel the same way, Charles, that we hope to see those. But we got a nice chunk of films in, man.
Yeah, if you go to our website, you'll see that we saw a total of 51 movies between the two of us over that week-long period.
Yeah, so and coming up a little later on in the show, we're gonna count down. Charles, do you have your list ready?
Oh yeah,
Okay, so we're gonna both have separate top 10 lists. And did you, and also I want to do the top 10 performances. Charles, did you get that list as well?
I do.
All right, so we will talk a little bit about that a little later on as well as recap. But I want to start off, man, that when I said it was a bittersweet week, man, I heard about a couple of folks that we lost, and we'll start off with Tina McElroy Ansa, who is a celebrated author, Charles. I'm not sure if you've ever read her books. I showed Charles before we got on the air today that as a producer at WHUR in the late 90s, I had her on several times to promote some of her work. And I know I showed Charles Ugly Ways. I know she put out another book she had was The Hand I Fan With, which I have a copy behind me. You Know Better from 1999. So a lot of these books, Baby of the Family, celebrated author, man. Charles, I'm sorry that you never got a chance to read any of her stuff. One of her books was adapted into a film, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was, if you give me a second, I could pull it up for you. But oh yeah, there it was. Baby of the Family was a film that had Loretta Devine and a couple of other people that were in it. But Tina McElroy Ansa was 74 years old from Macon, Georgia. Went to Spelman. As I said, celebrated author, and I wanted to start with her because I know that once we start with some of the other luminaries we've lost this week, that people like that get overshadowed. But you made a contribution, Charles. Thank you, Tina McElroy Ansa, for your contribution and what you gave us, including your work that's literally right behind me over my shoulder. That is a book that I read and enjoyed tremendously. Charles, and you said, I don't think you said you were ready. You were familiar with her, were you?
No, I don't know her work. I didn't know her. I've never seen the movie Baby of the Family either. So, yeah, when you told me who this was, I was like, okay, it's sad news, but I know she was from Georgia. I had a chance to look it up, but yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of her work because I've never seen it. So, yeah.
And Baby of the Family starred Alfre Woodard, Loretta Devine, Shirley Ralph, Vanessa A. Williams, Ty Bridges, and Pam Grier. So that was the one film that was adapted from her books. All right. So also this week we lost because we're gonna save the dean for last, but I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound condescending or sounds funny, but Charles, as a DC native, and I, as a person who have lived here for 40 years, I think if you're black in DC and you're of a certain age, and maybe you don't have to be of a certain age, Frankie Beverly, when you say that name, it means something in this town. Now, again, I'm not saying that it might not mean anything in the South or in the ATL or in New York or in Los Angeles. Charles, am I wrong? Frankie Beverly and Mays mean something in Washington, D.C. Now, go ahead. I'll let you go first and then I'll continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, for a guy that was born in Philadelphia, right up the road, he was adopted a son of the city. I mean, you couldn't. There's not a summer would go by that he wasn't here with Mays, or you couldn't go to anywhere in the city where there's a picnic or something going on, a cookout, and you hear his music. Most recently, we know Beyonce covered "Before I Let Go." So I mean, yeah, I mean, everybody of a certain age, I'll say,
Loved,
loves
loved
Frankie
Frankie
Beverly.
Beverly.
Love him.
You know,
Love him.
I wrote on my page. I was blessed enough to in the late 90s, early 2000s to work at two radio stations in town. Magic 102.3, which is a Radio 1 station, and I worked at Howard University at WHUR for 7 more years, right? And man, I'm telling you, we would get tickets. This happened a lot, Charles. That they'd be like, hey man, Frankie Beverly and Maze in town, man. They're gonna be playing down in Constitution Hall. So I remember going several times where I didn't even sit in the audience. It was in the wings, right? And the joke always was, if you've seen Maze in concert, I lost track of how many times I saw him in concert. 10, 15 times, I don't know. But I remember that they stopped that last album, their last studio album was 1993. And they toured until earlier this week when Frankie Beverly died, doing the same music, the same songs, and the same set list. It got
same set list, same
I would
order,
sit there
everything.
and I'd be like, yep. You hear the crowd go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, and you hear dun dun dun. And I'm like, here we go.
Here we go.
Boom, boom, boom. And everybody dressed in white.
Boom, boom, boom.
And
he would play. They would play that intro with that song for 5 minutes before they start singing it.
Oh yeah, you hear the drum. So that's why I said so a couple of days ago, Charles sends me a text. Charles is in Toronto. I'm here, right? And I didn't even need to look. When I saw you wrote R.I.P. Frankie Beverly, I said, this is going to be a dark day in the city today. And I was not lying, boy. Everybody on social media, everybody had amazed. People were putting up their pictures with Frankie. They would. And you want to hear something funny, Charles? Since Frankie left us, I have not listened to a Maze song since. Couldn't do it. Can't do it because I know them and I love them and they're like in my soul. Just can't play. I'm not comfortable enough right now to even put a Maze song on. So here's a question for you, Charles. What's your favorite song from Frankie Beverly and Maze?
Joy and Pain.
You know what my favorite song is? I Love You Much Too Much. What is this feeling?
Oh man!
Oh my God, I love that song, man.
We were. It seems weird though. It was just this year. We were at the Sundance Film Festival, sitting down with a friend of ours, and we were talking about Frankie Beverly.
That's true. That is true.
We were doing an episode of Black Famous. We were doing an episode of Black Famous, and we were saying this is the most Black famous person in the world, Frankie Beverly, and she had no idea who he was. We had to break out the music and start playing.
Young white colleague of ours had never heard of Frankie Beverly. So we went to Charles's point. We're playing Black, and she called me after Frankie Beverly passed to remind me of that story. She was like, "I remember." You guys turned me on to Frankie Beverly and Maze. And I was like, we were playing the videos for, remember that, Charles?
Yep.
I was like, it gets no blacker, Black famouser than Frankie Beverly. Like, no, I mean, it's funny. I've only known 2 white people ever who even knew who Frankie Beverly was. 2. But everybody Black knows Frankie Beverly. His music, like you said earlier, you go to cookouts every summer, man. Folks are playing Frankie Beverly and Maze. It's what we do as a people.
That's right.
Right. And the beauty of Frankie Beverly passing this week, man, was literally this year. He and Maze had announced that this was his farewell tour, and they were doing shows early this spring. Now, let me share with you very transparently the last time I saw Maze in concert, Frankie Beverly and Maze in concert. I was at Wolf Trap 2 years ago. And on this particular night, Frankie sounded bad. His voice was like it was shot. And like the band was kind of doing all of the stuff that Frankie would sing. And I kept saying to myself, man, let Frankie retire, man. Like, why are y'all still rolling Frankie out? This dude has been out, man, for like 40, 50 years. Let Frankie just chill. So my last experience watching Maze is not going to overshadow all the other times that I watched this guy in concert, man. And like seeing that hat, him dressed in white,
white, all dressed in white. Oh yeah.
All dressed in white, all of the great live in New Orleans, live in LA. I mean, come on, man. Frankie Beverly and Maze. Now I feel bad because, you've lost the lead singer of the group. what do you do? Do you still go on the road as Maze? I mean, I'm just asking, Charles. I'm like,
I mean, it was Maze featuring Frankie Beverly for a while, and then it was Frankie Beverly and Maze, and now most of the time it was just Frankie Beverly. People even forgot about Maze. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Earth, Wind, and Fire, the
see, I
Four
knew you
Top
were going there.
Temptations, all of them have retooled and continued
See,
on,
Earth,
but
Wind, and Fire is
it's
different. Earth, Wind, and Fire is different because they had two lead singers, right? So they had Maurice White, and then they had
and
Philip.
Philip Bailey.
So and I never forget, I'm glad you brought that up because this is a good segue. I remember also going out to the Wolf Trap Amphitheater out in Northern Virginia, and the first concert or tour they did without Maurice White, and I almost get misty thinking about it right now, is they put a huge screen behind the stage, and I'm trying to remember what song. It was a song that Maurice White led, and they had the video of him singing the song and the group, on stage singing it with them. And I was like, ooh, that's cold. So if Maze did something like that, I don't
It
know if
was probably
do it
it was
for a
probably
whole
after the
show.
love has gone because everybody knew that song and he sang the
Oh
lead and
man.
yeah,
It was so emotional, man. But to see Maurice again singing it and like
yeah.
Philip Bailey on stage, I was like, wow. But Maze, the issue would be if you did that with Maze, you'd have to do the whole show because Frankie sang lead on every song. I mean, I'm not being funny, but every
Oh no,
who else in the group ever, hey Frankie, I want to do this solo. Nobody.
look,
It's like Chuck
everybody.
Brown and the Soul Surge. When Chuck Brown is gone, what do? Who's gonna sing I Need Money? Chuck Brown did all of that.
Man, if somebody tried to sing it, they probably boom off the stage. They'd be like, "Where's the Sandman? Get him out of here!"
Yeah,
Ah,
man. But Frankie Beverly, man, we talk about we didn't even go into this because we went straight into our feelings about him. He started that band in his hometown. It was initially called Raw Soul back in 1970. I would say legend has it, but it's not legend. It's true. Marvin Gaye heard these guys and put them out there first. And
sure
when
did.
Marvin Gaye passed, they wrote Frankie Beverly wrote a song called Silky Silky Soul Singer, which described Marvin Gaye, but also now describes who he was. He was a silky, silky soul singer. And, if you're not a Maze fan, which I guess if you listen to this show, I'm assuming you are, before I let go, back in stride, we are one.
Mm.
Charles said it earlier, joy and pain. I'm like, dude, who doesn't know all the Frankie Beverly? Like you go to these concerts, you just sing every song, man. Running away, like, dude, we need love. Come on, man. Love.
Oh, just hearing you name all the songs, man, it makes me misty because I'm like you, man. I love the music, but I just can't hear it yet. I can't hear it
And
yet.
here,
I
I haven't
want.
listened to it. I can't get over you. But oh my God, the look in your eyes. Oh, folks in DC love the look in your eyes. I remember going to concerts and he played that one. Woo!
Mm,
Woo! So yeah,
man.
Charles, Frankie, the fact, and it's so sad to think about this, but we now are going to live in a world like we could still get the music, but Maze isn't coming. Like Frankie Beverly and Maze aren't coming to Washington, D.C. anytime soon. And I mean, I realized he was retiring anyway, but just
Right.
the thought of like the 90s, early 2000s, last 10 years, always here. Him and the two acts that I think are most closely tied to this city who aren't native Washingtonians, ironically, are two acts from Philadelphia. Patti LaBelle and Frankie Beverly and Maze. Those are
Yeah.
two stalwarts that probably tour and play dates in this market more than anybody else I know. Is there anybody else, Charles, that ever was in DC over the last 30 years more than Frankie Beverly and Maze and Patti LaBelle? Anybody? I'll wait.
Probably Phyllis Hyman.
What, Phyllis Hyman has been gone now
Yeah,
20
but she's
years?
been gone for it's been
No, but
yeah,
I'm
it's been a
saying over the
while. But
last 30 years, because Phyllis Hyman's been gone. But you're right.
yeah,
Phyllis Hyman played a lot of dates in town, but those two, always here. Always
always,
in town, man.
like
So Charles,
clockwork,
good.
like clockwork. Someone would come around and be like, "Let's go. What time's the Maze concert? When we going?"
Frankie Beverly,
I,
man, was 77 years old, man.
that's a one regret I have. I've been married for 28 years, and my wife and I never saw Frankie and Maze together.
uh,
We've both seen them, but we've never been to a concert together and seen them.
Hmm. Yeah, man. That one, that's like a punch in the gut. That one still hurts, man, because that's a huge part of my adulthood, watching these concerts and being there. And when you talk about those happy feelings, man, when do 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 do.
Do, do,
Oh,
do, do,
oh my God. It
do.
it it, it hurts. It hurts even thinking about it. Because again, there's certain like that set list, those songs, he played all those songs, man. And you would sit there and that feeling of love and community and unity in the house would just wash over you, man. You just sit there, these happy feelings.
Yeah.
Right now, man, it's gonna take us a minute to get back to those happy feelings, man, because there's feelings of loss right now. But we love you, Frankie, man. Thank you for everything, man. I
God
honestly
bless you, brother.
mean that. God bless you, man, for what you did, and will continue to do with your music because your music will live on. But man, for us who remember watching, man, it was special, special times, man.
Yeah.
All right, Charles. We're now almost halfway through the show. And now let's get to the one that, if you're talking about Frankie Beverly hurt, the other person we lost this week, which was huge, was James Earl Jones, man. Now, James Earl Jones, it's funny. I went to Charles calls it my favorite place now, which of course is Letterbox, and I created my 10 favorite James Earl Jones films. Man, I created a list, and I didn't even share this with Charles. So I'm just going to go through some of this stuff that's on the list for James Earl Jones, and it's not all the things you would think, Charles. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the name of the list on Letterboxd is The Greatness of James Earl Jones. I said we lost the voice, who was a star of stage and screen, the man that was responsible for two of the greatest characters in pop culture, Darth Vader and Mufasa. Jones was more than just a memorable voice. He brought his intensity to several groundbreaking films, as well as his Tony Award winning performance in Fences. And I said, here are some of Jones' most memorable roles. And I don't have these in any particular order, Charles, but I'm just going to name the 10 that I thought were most impactful. Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
If you
If
build
you
it,
build
they
it, they will
come.
come.
James Earl Jones, man, in this film, Kevin Costner's a star. And I'm sure there's some people that remember Kevin Costner in Field of Dreams, but who doesn't remember James Earl Jones and his
Right.
level of excitement that he brought to that film, man? Like the sense of wonderment that he's there as all these legends are coming out of the corn in Iowa. It's just a memorable performance, Charles. You got anything on Field of Dreams?
Yeah, my children had never seen Field of Dreams, and we had an opportunity to sit on the field at Orioles at Camden Yards and watch Field of Dreams. It was one of the greatest moments of my life, just to sit there and share that film with my boys. They were just amazed because, first of all, they knew him as Darth Vader, they knew him as Mufasa, but they hadn't seen him in that role, and just they were like, "Oh, he did other stuff too." I was like, "Oh God, yeah, okay, we're gonna have to have some education." But yeah, great role. Like you said, just the ebullience of him and in that film, it just infused the whole thing with joy, and it was just magical for him in that role.
Man, the next film I have is one that a lot of people have never seen. And I've watched it several times, including a couple of days ago, to prepare to talk about this. The film is simply called The Man. Now, 30 years before Dennis Haysbert was the fictional black president on 24, and even before Barack Obama became the first black president in real life, in 1972, James Earl Jones played a secretary, not a secretary of state. He played the Senate President pro temp, Douglas Dillman, who's a black dude who takes over as president of the United States after both the president and the Speaker of the House are killed in an accident, and the vice president can't serve, and he was next in line. So this movie which was a made-for-television movie, was really important because this comes at a run of James Earl Jones from like 1970 to about 1975, where he was just knocking out role after role. 70, of course, he does The Great White Hope. And if you've never seen him play that, which is based on Jack Johnson, it's an amazing film. An amazing film from James Earl Jones. And then
it's got to be on your list, right? I mean, you're going to talk.
It's on my list, man.
Okay, all right. Don't get ahead of yourself. Talk about the man.
But the man, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I want to get through what we need to talk about. But The Man is a made-for-television film, and it's notable for Jones bringing his level of intensity, that amazing instrument that God blessed him with, that voice, which would come into play a little bit later. So, of course, as I said, he does the Great White Hope in 1970. Of course, he's Oscar nominated for that. I don't know who ran against him, but I would have given it to James Earl Jones. But that's another story, right? 4 years later, another film on my list, Claudine, comes out, right? The backstory to this film, Charles, is that Diana Sands was cast to play Claudine. She had cancer. One of her best friends was Diane Carroll. She gives the role to her friend. Her friend gets nominated for an Oscar for it, right? But while she shines in the film, James Earl Jones plays a garbage man who's also her love interest. And then the politics of the 70s about how she's dating. She's got like 6 kids. She's seeing this garbage man. And of course, the welfare people are stalking her to make sure that the garbage man's not giving her extra benefits. And the level of dignity that both Diane Carroll and James Earl Jones brought to those performances. Charles, to this day, when I watch that movie's 50 years old. That movie with 2 other actors is just a regular movie. But with Carroll and Jones, it elevates to like a classic because of what they brought as actors to what was on the screen, on the page, and the level of their professionalism. Like, I was teasing Charles earlier. I said, as much as I love Gary Cooper as an actor, Gary Cooper to me was the same, whether he was in The Fountainhead, Sergeant York, like, all these films, Meet John Doe. When I say he was the same, I'm saying, like, I'm thinking about your range. I know you played all these characters, but I'm not really believing them. But James Earl Jones, I saw him as Othello. I saw him as Troy Maxon on Broadway playing in Fences. He brought, like, it's so funny. We talk about Star Wars, which I didn't put on a list. But the famous story is that they cast David Prowse, right? Because he had the size of Darth Vader and he fit into the suit. But when George Lucas heard his voice, he was like, I need something a little more commanding. So James Earl Jones goes in a voice booth. He spends the first movie, he's in there for 20 minutes. And he gives you a definitive blueprint of a character that is so memorable that 50 years from now, when you say Darth Vader, people go, James Earl Jones. That's how impactful that he was in that film.
For a long time, everybody thought that James Earl Jones was the guy in the suit too. I mean, they just knew that it was James Earl Jones, and just because of the voice. And that, it was an amazing that he could just carry a role like that, and just he's credited as the best villain of all time for being Darth Vader.
Yes, sir. So James Earl Jones, man, like I said, and then later on, when The Lion King comes out 20 years later, who do they get as the voice of Mufasa? Dude, James Earl Jones is just amazing, bro. Amazing.
He was so instrumental as Mufasa that every time they did a Lion King, he was always Mufasa. They changed people around him but he came back as Mufasa.
He is Mufasa. I don't care who you playing it. He's Mufasa forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So James Earl Jones, man, like I said, it's so funny. I've been watching a lot of his video, and I was sharing with Charles that Denzel Washington, if you watch this show for over the course of close to 15 years, I think Denzel Washington is like one of the greats, right? Like might be one of the greatest of his generation. And I
Yes.
saw him in Fences in the film several years ago, playing the exact same scene that James Earl Jones played on Broadway, that famous monologue where his son comes up and goes, "Dad, why
Dad,
don't you
why
like
don't you
me?"
like me?
Yeah. And I told Charles, I said, when I watched Denzel Washington play it on screen in Fences, his Troy Maxon comes across as a bitter man who the white man is taking opportunities from him. He's a garbage man, and he plays it very bitterly. And like, I don't did you get the feeling of love in the monologue when Denzel did it
No,
with his son?
no,
Okay.
not even a tinge of love. It was
Right. So
just that cold authoritarianism. Yeah, there it is.
yeah, like it's my house. You're gonna do this. But 20 years earlier, on stage, James Earl Jones plays the same role. And then I said they tweaked the language a little bit because he drops a couple of N's and some other words in there. But when he playing opposite Courtney B. Vance, a young Courtney B. Vance played this on Broadway. And it's the same lines, it's the same delivery, but he gives it a level of empathy when he does it on stage where you come away feeling that he loves his son, but just doesn't really know how to express it. And I'm sure Denzel took it and made his own interpretation. I told Charles, James Earl Jones is better. And I said, if you hear me say that over Denzel Washington doing anything, that's how good James Earl Jones was. And remember, he also did The Great White Hope 20 years earlier on stage before he brought it to film. So Jones was super versatile, man. Super, super
Yeah,
versatile. For people that
he's
don't know him as
he's
the
an
book.
e. I mean, let's not forget that he's an EGOT. He has all four. So I mean, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he's done it.
So James Earl Jones again, a life well lived. We were just talking about Frankie Beverly moments ago. James Earl Jones touched our lives in pop culture in very different ways, right? So there were the performances that he had and the things that he did that kind of flew under the radar. I had Clear and Present Danger on my list. Uh,
Mm.
there was several other movies that I had on the list. Bingo Longs,
And the Traveling All
All
Stars.
Stars, and
Yeah.
Motor Kings with him opposite Billy D. Williams in mid-70s. Um, he was a very, very versatile actor, man. And again, Charles, as we move and matriculate through life, these people are one-on-one, man. We're not getting another James Earl Jones. We're not, just much in the same way. We're never getting another Michael Jackson. We're never getting another Prince. We're never getting another Maurice White. We're not getting, you're not getting another Frankie Beverly. You're not getting any more of these people. When the creator made these people and gave them talent, there are people out there that are talented. But the reason we spend so much time talking about these people, because these people not just gave us things that or entertained us in a way, but they gave us things and life lessons that we can take with us through the rest of our lives, and hopefully through even mediums such as this, that we can impart that wisdom to the next generation who will continue this cycle of keeping these amazing people and their artistry alive.
You mentioned the other next generations. If you think about it, James Earl Jones touched multiple generations. I mean, you think about his work in the 70s and everybody who remembers him from that time. Then you think about the 80s when Star Wars comes through. And then in the 90s with the Lion King. So each generation he's touching lives again and over and over and over. Everybody knows and has their own personal connection to James Earl Jones. Now, some of us may have a wider experience, but we all have it. We all know who he was. So much so that you talk about Tiff. We just got back from Tiff, and every time after he passed, every time someone took the stage, and they did this at the piano lesson. They gave respect. Everybody said, first I have to say thank you to James Earl Jones. And it was multiple times that happened during the festival. I mean, people know him, love him, respect him. His legacy is undeniable.
So wait a minute, I forgot King Jaffe Joffrey and
From Coming to America.
I forgot, and I'm gonna mention this because I just thought it was funny watching him do this. Do you remember Meteor Man? The wig that Robert Downey
Oh my gosh.
James Earl Jones. It's like, dude, that's James Earl Jones. Why are you doing that to James Earl Jones, man?
I mean, but then he's played Malcolm X. He's played Paul Robeson.
Conan the Barbarian. I mean,
yeah,
so many films from James Earl Jones, man. Gardens of Stone. God, I'm just looking through. He played the father in Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins, Cry the Beloved Country, Patriot Games. Oh, and by the way, I told Charles, if you've never had a chance, and I put this on my list, a film called The Vernon John Story, right? Made for television movie. I think it was either on one of the streaming platforms. I saw this years ago, that he played a pastor at Ebenezer AME. And he was there, and the board thought that he was just this militant, radical guy. And they said, we got to bring somebody in that we can control. So as he's leaving out in the final scene, a young Martin Luther King Jr. is walking in, and they sort of exchange glances. And man, if you thought Vernon Johns was radical, wait till you see MLK. So yeah, man. So James Earl Jones. Oh, and finally Summersby. Him playing the attorney in Summersby with the racist guy at the jury. Oh my God. Love James Earl Jones, man. So James Earl Jones, 93 years old, Charles. We throw around words like icon and legend and all these things. James Earl Jones, I will simply say, was 101. He's 101, man. Much like Frankie was 101. We're not getting for these people, man. So thank you for your contributions, Charles. It's amazing that there are things sometimes that we take for granted, right? This artistry that these people who are still walking among us, and we give them these heroic salutes when they're done. James Earl Jones was always here, man. Frankie was always here. Tina McElroy Anson was always here, man. So let us use this as an example, man, to make sure that we give flowers to the ones who entertain us, enlighten us, teach us, educate us. That's what's important, man.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Charles, we got about 15 minutes ago, so now it's time for us you open the show with shame. Shame stands for, if people have ever watched Game of Thrones, there's a fantastic scene with Cersei. I think it was in season 7 or was it 7 or 8? One of those two scenes.
Don't ask me. I never watched an episode.
There's a scene where she's walking along and the folks are screaming shame. And Charles and I were leaving a movie theater the other day. Did we just finish watching The Heretic? Was that the film we were watching?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. Yeah.
So the Scotiabank Theater is a 24-seat multiplex, right? So during the Toronto International Film Fest, they take over the entire venue, and protesters are allowed to line up outside. Now, earlier that day, Charles, there was a PETA demonstration against Pharrell for his film Dullsville and the Doodleverse.
No. Well, it was piece by piece first, and then they did Dullsville and the Doodleverse too.
So it was funny because I was standing outside online earlier, and it was early in the morning, and the people were screaming, and somebody said, "Man, why are they screaming at Pharrell? He ain't even here." So I said, "Hey, man, don't worry about it." So we go inside, we watch the movie, and as we're coming down the escalators, we're able to look outside, and Charles lined up on both sides of the street, the side that we were coming out on to, as well as across the street, there must have been what, a couple hundred people with Ukrainian flags.
Right, right.
And as
Yeah.
we walked out the door, I'm trying to get through the crowd, and they're going, shame,
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 shame.
shame. I was like, what? What did I do? I haven't done anything, right? So we find out that there was some film that was playing, the Russian something. I can't remember the title, but they were protesting that. What does my good friend Charles Kirkland Jr. do in the middle of all this? We're trying to get through the crowd of people screaming shame, and Charles stops and goes, "Hey man, what's happening? Like, what are you doing?"
I mean, I need to be in the know if they're out there sacrificing themselves, protesting. They don't
Woo.
want it to fall on deaf ears. So I'm like, what movie y'all talking about? What's going on? I want to know. I want to know.
So yes, man. So that was
But
just
of course,
one.
I picked the one guy. I picked the one guy that couldn't speak English too good, and it was he was not communicating the message well enough. I was like, oh, forget it.
Oh man, but like we said earlier, man, you and I saw 51 movies. Um, we're not going to review any of the movies we saw, but let's talk a little bit about what I call the similarities of some of these titles, right? So I will start by saying, I'll start with a funny story, right? So I get tickets over the weekend, last weekend, and I'm in the theater to see a film called The Last Showgirl, right? This is a movie, Pamela Anderson. It's the world premiere, you know. I get some tickets, and as Charles and I both know, that the tickets are the luck of the draw, right? You go to the box office, you know, over at headquarters early in the day. You go, hey, man, I have an allotment of 10 tickets. I want to request a ticket. Do you have a ticket to this movie, right? So I say, hey, do you got a ticket to The Last Showgirl? They go, sure, we'll put it in your account, right? So I show up at the theater, Charles, and I'm looking at my seat, and it's like GG 32 or whatever it was. I don't know what GG 32 is in the Prince of Wales. So I walk in, and they escort me to like 6 rows from the front of the stage, and I'm on the edge, right? Like a premium seat. Seat so good that like colleagues were walking by going, who do you know to get that seat? How did you do that? I'm like, hey man, I'm Tim Gordon, baby. so as I'm sitting there, I look over my shoulder, and Francis Ford Coppola, the director of my favorite movie of all time, The Godfather, is literally sitting there. And I go, gotta go and say hi to Francis, right? I do. So I get up and I don't run. I walk over respectfully, Charles, and I introduce myself. Hi, I'm Tim Gordon. Sir, your movies mean a great deal to me. And he says, and I quote, that is so nice of you. What's your name? So I'd already told you what my name was, but I tell it to him again. Hey, I'm Tim Gordon. And he says, have you met my daughters? So he introduces me to his 2 daughters. So I'm like, thank you. He's like, that is very nice of you. I'm like, thank you, Mr. Coppola. And then I just simply walk away, right? I don't need a picture. Charles has been with me enough to know I didn't get a picture. Didn't need one because I needed the interaction. What was the picture going to say? Like, here's a picture with me and Marlon Brando. No. So I come and sit back down in my seat, and I'm on a high right now. I've literally met one of my favorite directors who's directed my all-time favorite film. I'm sitting in this amazing seat. Charles, you know where this story is going, right?
Yeah.
So I watched this movie, The Last Showgirl. Pamela Anderson stars along with Jamie Lee Curtis, Dave Bautista, story of a young woman who's been a showgirl as part of a show called The Razzle Dazzle for 38 years. And as the movie starts, there's a new show coming in, and like they're gonna shut this show down in like 2 weeks. Dave Bautista plays the stage manager, who's a very different performance. He lost all that weight that you remember him having in films like Guardians of the Galaxy and some of the other things he's done. So he's this slim down guy. And then Jamie Lee Curtis plays like a former member of the ensemble of the Razzle Dazzle who's now retired and spray painted full of orange with orange hair. She's a cocktail waitress in Vegas. And Pamela Anderson is like the mother of this family, right? So I wrote after the film was over, Charles, wait for it, Pamela Anderson, welcome to the Oscar race. So don't think of anything of it. I leave, right? The next day, I'm back in the same theater watching another movie, and it begins, Charles. So a couple of colleagues walk over and they go, "The Last Showgirl, you like that film?" I said, I said, "Yeah, what was wrong?" And then another good buddy of ours, Clayton Davis, comes over from Variety, and because I'm saying, I thought her performance was good. She could be an Oscar race. And he goes,
He's
"Tim's
retreating
not
already. He's
right, right." So he says, "Tim's not wrong." He said the problem is that despite the fact she's never been nominated, she does have a shot, but the film's not good enough to get her there. So they were crushing me over this movie, and I was like, I never said The Last Showgirl, welcome to the Oscars. I said Pamela Anderson, and then I thought about it some more, Charles, after I slept on it and went, that performance really wasn't that good. I said all of that up to tell you that you can be influenced by the very close, very good location. You can be by the superstar director who's your idol that's sitting behind you, and like all the trappings. And then you wake up and go, "Hey, that movie wasn't good."
you had movie goggles on.
It's called the festival bubble, man. So I just said all that to say, so that's the start of my tiff. But Charles, 3 straight days I go to the movies, and I felt like I was watching the same movie over and over, man. And pretty much it was the same story. Well, not the same story, but like the setup is essentially the same for 3 straight days. I would go in, and it would be a character who the film was based on, who's the protagonist, who lived in an area that wasn't the nicest area, or the upbringing wasn't the nicest upbringing. They had some sort of an amazing talent, yet in some instances they didn't have people that really believed in the talent. Like they might have had one
Right.
person that believed in it, but then there were all these haters on the side, like, "Oh, you a champion, huh? Oh, you the champion." 3 days in a row. It got so funny. I'm sitting next to Black Girl Nerds, Jamie Broadnax, friend of ours, right? And we had watched Unstoppable the previous day with Gerald Jerome. And this next day, we were watching The Fire Inside with Ryan Destiny. And when the movie was over, I looked at Jamie. Jamie looked at me. She said,
We saw this.
"That feels a little familiar." I said, "Yeah, it feels like yesterday." So then the next day, me, TT Stern, Enzi, who's a friend of ours and friend of our show, we all go see, and I'm laughing in line. I said, "Here we go again, day 3. Here's another one of these movies." We go see Resball, the premiere of that, which is going to play on Netflix several months. Again, story of a basketball team on an Indian reservation was it New Mexico?
Yes.
Yeah. And they are trying to play their way to a championship, and their best player commits suicide early in this film. So there's this pall of this serious darkness of this story. So those 3 films, Charles, I'll start there. Did you now? I know you have some similarities. I got a couple more of these. Did you see any other similarities in films at TIFF?
Absolutely. I think I mean, there was another movie called K-Pops with Anderson .Paak and his son. And basically, he hooks up with this girl back when they're young, and then they break up. Come to find out, I mean, the girl has moved to Korea, and he goes to be a drummer on the show, on a game show, one of those variety shows where, like American Idol, but it's for K-pop stars.
Mhm.
And there's this one boy on the show he's not really that great, but people like him, but he doesn't have all the things together. So he's kind of the loser kid, and he goes in and he tries to help the kid, and come to find out that the kid is his son, and so he helps him to and he gets him into the finals of and you know how it goes. It's the loser underestimated and does better, and 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 so it's the same formula. It just was with music instead of boxing or wrestling, and so or
Oh, so
basketball.
you're comparing, because I was asking, what's the similarity? So you're comparing this film to the three that I talked about.
Yes,
Oh, I got you. I
absolutely.
got you. All right. So quickly, let me do. There were two films that were relationship films, which were like I called two sides of the same coin, right? The first one was a movie called All About You. And I think that was the Brett Goldstein, and I can't remember what his co-star was, but it was the story of these two friends who had been best friends for years. And they had this kind of on again, off again thing in this futuristic story where folks, instead of having like an app where you can go and like a match.com or something like that in the future, they called it in this film the test. And you would take the test and it would help you connect with your soulmate, right? So these two are best friends, and she goes to take the test. And instead of him manning up and saying, hey, don't take this test, he allows her to take the test. And then they spend the rest of the film falling in and out of relations with each other because she's got somebody he can't love. So you contrast that with a film called
Live in time.
Live in Time. Oh my God. What is her name? Florence Pugh and Spider-Man.
Andrew Garfield.
Thank you. are a couple in a film, and we will review this film a little later on. But I just thought this story, Charles, did you get a chance to see it?
No,
Yeah.
no.
So when you watch it, the brilliance of this film is that a conventional love story would tell you the origin story and then take us through act one, act two, and then finally act three. Well, what this film is famous for is that the whole film is out of sequence. So all these scenes happen that we meet them at one place. We go backwards, we go forwards, we go sideways. They don't have a child. They're having a conversation about, I don't want a child. The next scene, there is a child. Then they go back. So it's brilliant the way it's executed. But by the time you get to that third act and that last couple of scenes, man, it is heartbreaking. And it shows love in two very different ways. It's the two films that I contrasted and went, oh yeah, those are kind of similar and those kind of work. And then Charles, I know you got a chance before I did to see the Executioner, which
Whew.
you said famously, and you were right, that there was a film we fell in love with last year at TIFF called Kill. And if you haven't seen Kill, Kill is a 2 hour plus thrill ride of just violence. Just, just violence, man. Like if you want to see a fun 1970s style, like, no, don't do that. Oh, he did. Kill is great. Now, the Executioner doesn't give you the Kill vibe, but it's still an awfully good crime epic, man. Like, this story of these five folks that belong to like a special crime unit,
Major crimes unit.
major
Yeah,
crimes, and trying to take people down. It's a good film.
it's
It's a
really
good
good.
film.
It's really
So
good.
that, and then Cloud. Did you see Cloud?
I saw Cloud.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and and
Cloud was interesting. I would contrast that only because of the ethnicity of both these stories. I still think the Executioner is much better, but Cloud is a pretty interesting story
you
of
are you. So, sometimes you're a horrible man. The Executioner is Korean. I mean, Hong Kong, and
I said the
the other
ethnicity.
Cloud
You
is
look at these as
Japanese.
Asian films.
Okay, you just clumping all the Asians together. All
Just
right,
like
no
we
problem.
clump all the African Americans together, all the Africans together, all the Latins. Yes, we're loving it. He said you're horrible. Now that was funny. When did you break out tell a story about Tim, you're a horrible man. Do you remember? Riff
um,
Raff. We're coming out
oh,
of
we had just finished seeing Riff Raff, which was Bill Murray and
Gabrielle Union,
yeah.
Ed Harris.
So yeah, great, pretty good movie.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready to leave, and Tim is famous for breaking out quickly from a film, and we get to the steps and there's some handicapped people who are getting their chairs and their walkers and stuff
I'm not
and
proud, by the way, of
and
this
and,
story.
and Tim is not happy. He's like, couldn't they wait until the non-handicapped people could get out first? And I
I
was
said I'm
like,
not proud of this story.
I said, sometimes Tim, you are a horrible man.
Which elicited a great deal of laughter from me because I'm like, you're right. Sometimes I am a horrible man, but yeah, man. So we're gonna come back, I would say, over the next several weeks, man, and start knocking out some reviews, man, because there's gonna be some films. We didn't even get a chance because we got like 2 minutes to go. We'll put it on the site. But there's some films. Charles, you got a couple you want to rattle off, like in your top five?
Well, you said you like ID Executioner and you like Kill. I think there was another movie that went to the Kill level called The Shadow Strays, and it's a Netflix film, and they have the potential. Could be the Thai, I think it was Indonesian, actually, Indonesian John Wick with this girl who's just kicking butt throughout the whole film. Yeah, I
And you now
mean.
just telling me about this?
No, we told you about it before. You just never got a chance to see it.
Man, you know that as they say on the streets, that's my ish. I love them. All right,
Look,
we got to get
I
out
was
of
at
here, man.
I was at the party for the piano lesson, and I was still talking about with Netflix about the Shadow Strays. I'm like, y'all need to develop that one. That's the one right there.
All right, I'm gonna be reaching out about trying to get a screener of that one, but we will have a whole lot more, man. But we spent a lot of time talking about our legends that we lost today, man. And one more time, Tina McElroy, Ansa, Frankie Beverly, and James Earl Jones. Thank you for everything. And on behalf of my co-host and good friend Charles Kirkland Jr., man, we tell you to see something good at the movies. Unfortunately for you, a lot of movies that we've seen you can't see for a couple of months, man. So I'm sorry, we're just recapping Toronto for you. But there's some good movies coming down the pike, man.
Yeah.
So until next week, man, you guys take care. Peace, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Take care.